Last week the world's attention focused on the Oscar-winning documentary film For Sama, about the plight of civilians caught up in Syrian war. Now the world looks away as one of the conflict's biggest humanitarian crises unfolds in Idlib. Foreign editor David Pratt examines what's at stake. A few days ago a Syrian doctor gave his personal account of life on the frontline. At one point he described to an Al Jazeera journalist how, following a Syrian regime airstrike, many civilian casualties, along with the bodies of the dead, were brought into the hospital where he worked. With precious few resources, he and the other doctors were overwhelmed. The doctor was then confronted with the terrible choice of deciding which of the two badly wounded patients lying before him he should respond to first and which should be referred to another hospital. One was a man in his 30s, the other a 3-year-old boy. Whoever the doctor decided would be transferred would most likely die during the 30-minute journey. In the event the doctor chose to work on the child, who died from the shrapnel wounds in his chest shortly afterwards. Finding that the man was still waiting on an ambulance to transfer him, the doctor began to work on his wounds, only again to lose his patient on the operating table. Frustrated and exhausted, the doctor went outside where he was asked by another local man about the two patients he had just tried to save before informing the man that both had died. "You know, doctor, the two were a man and his son," the local man told him. Later, the doctor would describe how losing both patients was one of the most traumatizing moments of his life. In facing such a painful choice, the doctor is far from alone in Syria. Nowhere is that more evident than in Idlib province, where one of the worst humanitarian catastrophes of this near-decade-long conflict is shamefully playing out. I say shamefully, because many of those innocents caught up in the worst of what is happening, find themselves in such a position through no fault of their own. Instead they are caught up as human pawns and collateral in a vast game of cynical geopolitics, over which they have no control. But more of that shortly. For the moment just consider this. At time of writing, some 750,000 ordinary people are fleeing fighting and bombardment. That and the fact that an estimated 60% of these are said to be children faced with the choice of staying and dying or fleeing to camps on a closed border with Turkey, beggars belief in a war already beyond the pale in terms of civilian suffering. Idlib province is currently home to more than 3 million people, more than 1 million of whom only arrived there in the first place because they had already been uprooted from their homes in towns and cities across Syria. For more on this story, visit the news article link.